on the chat box on your right and throw in your questions on the Q&A box. We will try to answer them after the presentation and during the sidelines. Sweet. So this is our second virtual OpenShift meetup of the year, and we are lucky to have Wayne Dovey talk to us about advanced cluster management for Kubernetes. Wayne is our Red Hat OpenShift Specialist Solutions Architect. He's based in Sydney and have been instrumental on many successful OpenShift adoption within the region, APAC region, that is. But before that, Mike Calizzo, who's a regular speaker, will give us a brief talk and presentation on OpenShift 4.5 highlights. Mike Calizzo is our Senior Solutions Architect, Filipino-born open source contributor, father, and an OpenShift enthusiast. So with that, I'll pass the mic to you, Michael.
Yeah, so thanks for the introduction, Joseph. We're expecting around 46 RSVP, so maybe some stragglers are still going to join. It's just good because I'm going to give a highlights of OpenShift 4.5 and OCS 4.5 first before we give the floor to Wayne to do his magic on ACM. So let's start giving you some highlights on OpenShift 4.5. So OpenShift 4.5 was delivered about 3 weeks ago. And in OpenShift 4.5, this release brings us, vSphere IPI experience is one of the big improvements on the installer or installation of platform. The next features that I can highlight here is the improvement around routers. This is now router will now support HTTP2, and lastly, we're getting a major bump on the version of Elasticsearch to 6, which has improved the indexing of the stack and improved the throughput as well. As always, I'm going through this high-level architecture of OpenShift 4. As for this meetup, Wayne is going to talk about, multi-cluster management using advanced cluster management software that Red Hat and IBM has worked together and has delivered as tech preview as of the moment. What ACM is going to give you is it will provide you an end-to-end visibility and control to manage your Kubernetes environment. You can take control of your application, modernization program with management capabilities of the cluster, starting from cluster creation, application lifecycle, and also provide security and compliance for all of them across data centers and hybrid cloud environment. The roadmap of OpenShift looks like this. We just delivered 4.5 GA about 3 weeks ago. As I mentioned earlier, one of the highlights that I really like on OpenShift 4.5 was to deliver a IPI for vSphere. Looking forward on 4.6, OVN will be GA. I think it was supposed to be delivered on 4.5, but it was missed because there are some stuff that still need to be worked on upstream. Bare metal IPI is going to be delivered as well, or planning to be delivered on 4.6. I think this will be a huge win for customers who wants to deploy OpenShift 4 on bare metal. We talk about the remote worker nodes, which specifically very useful for some use cases which requires edge or a telco type of deployment. And looking beyond that, the most notable OpenShift builds will be GA on a single node cluster coming early 2021. So going through, basically what I did is just to give you a very high level information about OpenShift 4.5. Now I'm going to talk about OpenShift Container Storage 4.5. So Red Hat OpenShift Container Storage gives you, scalability, simplicity, and it is basically really designed to work with OpenShift deployment. And all other suppliers can tell you that, but because Red Hat OpenShift Container Storage engineering team works closely with our OpenShift business unit, I would say that if you think of getting a storage that will work for your OpenShift deployment, you should consider looking at OCS yourselves. So these are the key features of OpenShift Container Storage 4.5. In the previous version, we only deliver the internal mode, or basically a deployment where you can put your OCS node inside the cluster. In this release, we now incorporated or added the external mode. We also have improved the security features by, of course, in alignment of OpenShift 4, we have delivered FIPS as well on this version. Other features that will be available as well is the proxy environment, and the tech previews that I am really excited on is the dynamic PV expansion, which will be available, I would say, in the next version. So going a little bit deeper on the disconnected environment. In a disconnected environment, there is no access to OLM catalog, and the Red Hat image registry. In order to install OCS, you basically need two things. You need to provide catalogs that contains OCS images, local storage operator, and the library bucket provisioner for CSV. You need to mirror all images that is required for OCS to the mirror registry that is inside your disconnected environment. In the proxied environment, OCS 4.5 aligns to OpenShift Container Platform using, basically how proxy deployment are deployed in OpenShift environment. And on top of that, we, as I mentioned earlier, we have added the FIPS validated implementation as well for security purposes. Now, summarizing the OpenShift Container Storage mode option, here are the possible combination on how you will deploy your OCS. You will have an OCP. Basically, you can have a mix of OCP worker node and OCS node in one VM, or you can have it in a separate VM, and on top of that you have an external mode as well. So those are the things that are possible. And if you guys are interested for us to talk about this in details for these features, especially for our New Zealand customer, you guys can reach us by contacting me, Joseph Tihal in here, as well as Andrew Spurgeon or other Red Hat New Zealand team, so that we can go and provide you a deeper discussion and provide you deeper updates of what's new on these two exciting technologies that we deliver. And with that, I will give the floor to Wayne so that he can start talking and sharing to us the good news about ACM. Back to you, Wayne.
Thanks, Michael, and thanks, Joseph. So just a few things. There's a Q&A poll inside this BlueJeans. So I think if you've got any questions, just plug them in there. We'll have a look at them afterwards. And just feel free to ask anything hopefully we can give you a suitable answer. Otherwise, we can always get back to you. I'm just going to try and share my screen. Can you see my screen?
Yep.
Oh, yeah. Hey, everybody. So today we're talking about ACM. ACM is a pretty exciting product from Red Hat that's gone GA as of last week. And essentially, I think it addresses a lot of issues that we are finding with people managing multiple clusters. Essentially, I think the goal is for us to identify the people that are affected and are using the clusters, and kind of really address the issues that they have, from day to day. So a couple of key personas we like to talk about: the IT operations person, the core ops guys who have to manage these clusters and figure out what to do with them on a daily basis. So in this example, we talk about how we can manage the lifecycle of a cluster, and how can we have a single control plane where we can actually view the clusters and do administration tasks. If there's a failure of the clusters, how we can identify that, and of course how we can monitor the usage across the clusters. Because of course, with OpenShift, you have to look at resource management and memory, CPU, the standard stuff. This is a great way to kind of bring it all together. The next key persona we talk about is people doing DevOps and SRE, and I think it's essentially for these people, they want to get stuff into production. They want to know the availability of their environments. They want to push stuff out quickly and simply, and of course they want to ensure that they've got some consistency over different environments. This is a great tool for them. Making a DevOps person happy, always a good thing. And the last person we'd like to talk about is our SecOps people. They have an important job to make sure that.
Sorry to interrupt you, Wayne. There are some people who can't see the screen that you're sharing somehow.
Oh, really?
You
can see my screen? Oh, there's a little slider, so you can on your BlueJeans you slide to get to the actual presentation. Can you see that? Maybe that's what's going on. Can you guys see my screen?
I can absolutely see your screen.
Yeah, so there's a little slider, so you move the slider to the presentation piece, or you can see you can see my ugly mug. It's up to you. Move it to the presentation. I'm not sure. So people are saying there's no slider.
Yeah.
Slider was before, but now it's gone. It was for my.
Yeah, let me actually try something here.
Maybe if I stop sharing and start and share again, maybe that makes a difference. Let me do that again.
Yeah. Wayne, that's a good idea, please, if we can try that.
Yeah.
Could be my massive monitor I'm looking at. Things.
Yeah, I can see that screen.
Okay, I've reshared, so maybe that's better. Only challenge with this thing is, let me ask Mark directly.
Yeah, so I'm not sharing any screen right now. So
otherwise, maybe if you can share them, maybe there's a problem on my side.
Yeah, can you actually share the link?
Yeah,
Inder can see it now.
Oh, you can.
Inder can see it now. Cool.
Yeah. Okay. Tim says you can't see it. Nope. Still. Oh dear. Okay. Maybe if you can share it, Mike. I'll send you the link.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Wayne, for those that can't see the slides, maybe you could do an interpretive dance.
Yeah,
where did you share it?
I can try and do it like that. No, not gonna happen. I'm just sending it now.
Okay, no worries.
You should have it in your Red Hat chat.
Okay, yeah. So can you
I'll share it.
unshare your screen? Yeah, yeah.
Fun times. I hope this works for my showing my actual demo. Anyway, we'll see.
Okay. So can you guys see that screen?
I can see it.
You guys see it? Oh wow.
Oh wow, that's something wrong with
I think we can see it from the participants.
Something is wrong with the participants. Can you see the video though? Can you guys see the video? Still no. Yeah, they can see the video. Can you try to rejoin and see how it goes?
Okay, let me try share my screen again.
Yeah, do that.
Okay.
How about the screen now, Brian?
Okay, cool. That looks like it's fun now.
Yeah. Cool.
Weird.
This is a bit of annoyance. Okay, cool. Now they can see it now.
Epic.
Cool.
Okay, let's carry on. So I was talking about our favorite people, the SecOps people. So essentially, this tool gives them the ability to not only kind of get information on vulnerabilities or policy violations, but also they can enforce them. And I'll show you examples on how that works with this tool. Okay, so Advanced Cluster Manager from a high level, this is the sort of things that we hope to achieve with the product. Effectively, we can do multi lifecycle management, policy-driven governance, risk and compliance, and I'll show you some examples on that, and advanced application lifecycle management. So I think a few people might remember the KubeFed project and the kind of the history of around that. It seemed like it got too complex to get that going on Kubernetes, and the Kubernetes group sort of died. So this is an answer to it, and I think it's really elegant how it's been implemented. You'll see how we can actually use this to deploy applications across multiple clusters and manage them. So these slides are currently based on version 1, so you'll see some variations in things that have changed. Of course, with version 2, or quite a few improvements. This view shows you essentially the capability to kind of view multiple clusters in multiple regions. So you'll notice that managing AKS and that. And for my demo, I've actually got more examples that I've actually deployed that we can manage. So just to be clear, you can manage any Kubernetes out there, including OpenShift, but you can only deploy OpenShift with this tool. In this example here, it shows policy management. So you have a central view of how to manage policies. I've set up a couple examples on that, and of course you can see if a cluster is violating or not. And you can even set in things like ranges. So if you want to enforce, the users on a cluster to only use a certain amount of memory, for instance, you can actually set that up, which is useful because resource contention from a single point of management is extremely useful. I know I speak to a lot of customers about the issues they're having constantly with managing the actual resources. I spoke to uni yesterday, and they're like, they're just finding it so hard to manage the actual cluster itself. And one of the things with version 2 that's very impressive is the capability to show the current usage of a cluster. I'll give you that example. Here's the view of the application lifecycle management. So this is quite a complicated application that's been deployed here, but you can see 2 different clusters that it's been managed on. And there's a couple of objects that are required to implement this to get going. But essentially, it honors all the generic Kubernetes artifacts. So, for example, like deployment, service, and route. And you're able to implement these bits and pieces, and as complex or as simple as you want the application to be. So some detailed use cases. You have a typical setup where you're running different versions of OpenShift. You might even have publicly hosted OpenShift. You might have a collection of EKS, AKS, EKS, IKS. IKS is the IBM version, and I think you know the rest. And in this example, you might want to inspect things like misconfiguration, what's happening with the pods, the resource capacity, like I mentioned. And this is a nice way to sort of get a view. As well, on top of this, you want to show the policy violation. So one of the great features with ACM is the capability to dynamically deploy clusters. And at this moment in time, we support the major cloud providers as well as a bare metal setup. The bare metal is not GA yet, so I think that's intended for 2.1 release. But you can see in this example, I'm able to dynamically deploy to the public cloud providers. And I can actually customize this. It creates artifacts in YAML. And those YAML artifacts can be saved and actually replayed to the cluster if required at a later stage. It's really straightforward and easy to set this sort of stuff up and deploy cluster. One of the things I really like is the capability to do searching. So you can dynamically search for objects in multi-clusters. It's really nice to kind of find something you're looking for, and you have an ability to save a search. So, for instance, you want to see certain things, common things you look for all the time. The save search feature, you can just replay that and have a look and see. So it's very detailed, a lot of information in there, and all in one place, essentially. The other cool feature that's available is the ability to run command line. So you can see in this example, running a kubectl command. Other options would be like if you want to run Helm and STO commands. So this is currently tech preview on the GA release. But going forward, I think the idea is to, you can only run this on the hub setup at the moment. I think going forward in the future, you can run this on your target or your managed clusters effectively. And this way you can really kind of tailor make the RBAC policy. So users essentially can only do a set amount of kind of commands and that. So it's quite powerful, and I think it's really important to be able to manage this from a central location. So policy management. So effectively, when you create a policy, this is the way that this is managed and pushed out to the managed clusters. So you can see in this example, we have an actual policy that's propagated to multiple managed clusters. And effectively, this way, you're able to kind of sync and control that from a sec and DevOps point of view. One of the things to note, so this is, like I said, it's based on version 1. We have moved away from using etcd as a store, and we've moved all that and rewritten the API to actually make those CRDs currently. So it's a first-class citizen. I think it's a much better option. You've already got etcd you have to manage in OpenShift itself. And so it really simplifies the management of the cluster and makes it a lot more lightweight. In this view, you're seeing a user create a policy. So there's a number of policies you can choose from, like prepackaged or some options or specifications. There's quite a bit of work going on this at the moment with the Essential 8 piece. So I think, bring your own policy feature is definitely something that's coming along to the product. But I think out of the box, you've got quite a few good options. And again, I'll show you that on my live demo. So here's the selection of options that you can look to implement. And you can choose between inform and enforce. There might be an example where you want to find out if a namespace exists. The inform option will actually just say, okay, yes, the namespace exists. If you do the enforce, it'll actually create the namespace. It's really useful to kind of gauge the usage of the cluster, making sure that people are kind of adhering to policies. It's pretty rich. A bit more about the application deployment lifecycle. So again, you're able to visualize the relationship between objects. You're able to create and scale things automatically, and you're able to sort of get an idea of the health of all the objects in there. So it's possible now to deploy this from multiple locations. For most of my examples, I'm using a GitHub deployment, but of course you can use different things like Helm and other things. For example, Argo CD is potentially an option you want to use for your CI/CD or your deployment or management of the cluster. So there's lots of examples of how you can source your actual code deployment. So we call that a channel inside ACM. So channels are effectively where you're getting your code and your deployment from. And what's useful about this is you're able to change different parameters. And for instance, if you want to do some rolling updates, if you want to change the release windows, you're able to modify this kind of desired outcome. So we have quite a few examples out there on how to deploy to the service. So in this example here shown, you're able to simulate a sort of a GitOps deploying code placement and running sort of a green deployment. RBAC is very important for this product. So this is a breakdown of essentially what you're able to do and what access you're able to give to certain people. And that way you're able to control and manage the access to the cluster, as well as ensure that the users are doing the correct things on the cluster. So here's the setup of the architecture. ACM is deployed currently through an operator on OpenShift, and effectively, the UI and all the components are on OpenShift cluster. And essentially, when you add a managed cluster or we create a cluster, essentially it calls back to the mother home, the hub cluster, and you're able to then manage the suitability of deploying applications and policies and all that. Here's the guidelines. Like I mentioned, it's deployed on operator. So give it a whirl. As I said, this is based on version 1. You can see so the etcd will go away. Version 2 will be there. Quite a bit of documentation on how to get this deployed, and your sort of minimum spec recommended for like a test. So getting going for a test implementation is pretty minimal. And of course, for production, really depends how many clusters you want to manage and what's the sort of stuff you're trying to achieve with that. Okay, so demo time. Fingers crossed, the demo guides are smiling. I've had quite a bit of problems with my broadband in Sydney, but hopefully it goes all right. Okay, so here's the view of my cluster at the moment. You can see it's got all the kind of capabilities in a single place that you can view and go to. I've pre-opened this already so you guys can see what's going on. You can see my screen all right. There's no problems with this. Want to check?
Yes, Dwayne.
Awesome.
Yep.
Okay, perfect. So for this example, I've got a few clusters under management. I've got an EKS, AKS, OpenShift running on Amazon ×2, and then an OpenShift running on bare metal. And here we can see pretty much the consolidated pods under management. It's pretty nice breakdown of all these components and all the pods running there. And from this view, I can actually see how many of my clusters are compliant, and how many pods have failed, running, pending. And I can actually, link into all of these if I want to get a bit more information, as well as, cluster status, which is really useful. And that'll take me off to the link and show me exactly what's going on if there's a problem with one of the clusters. In this case, I see that all the clusters are healthy and there's no problem here. And of course, I can launch from here to console URL if required. Okay. The next part I want to show you is the search capability. So I've got a saved search that I've put on there. This is relating to my web methods application that I've deployed. And this, I can see exactly what clusters it's running on, how many replications are running on that, and things like how long it was read, and any labels and associated secrets and all that. Very useful, the save search, because again, we can kind of create as many as we want to and replay them. This is a view of the topology piece. You can see all the clusters that are under management. The Sydney cluster seems to be doing very well because it's got no violations. We'll dig into what that means and understand that. The next tab is around the applications piece. So you see I've got 3 different applications deployed. One of them is called Bad Developer. So in this example, we've actually deployed a really bad bit of code here. So it's like a really old version of Tomcat. And I think what we want to illustrate from that is how does ACM deal with this, and how does it figure out there's a problem? So I'll show you exactly what that means. The next example is an application that's been deployed that's got issues, like it's trying to run pods as root, which OpenShift won't allow, because security is very paramount to running OpenShift. And the other example is just a standard bug web methods application that I've deployed. So let's go check out first and foremost the bad developer application. See what's going on. What are these guys up to? I was in trouble. Essentially, my broadband's a bit slow, so just bear with me. Essentially, this is the application that's been deployed under management of ACM. You can see that there's obviously some issues with this application, and we want to figure out a bit more about what's going on with this application. So I think the policy violation thing is a bit of a concern. But what I want to do is I want to go into the policy violation piece and figure out what's going on here. So if I go and check out vulnerabilities piece, I can have a look at the violations on this cluster. So what I've done is I've set up the actual capability to view if any kind of vulnerability is running on the cluster itself. You can see that it's screaming out saying there's a violation, there's an image violation. And what I'll do is I'll actually link off to that cluster, and I'm going to have a look now. So what it's actually done is it's installed the vulnerability operator on the actual cluster itself. So let me just jump into this cluster here. There. So this is a direct link to the OpenShift cluster. And okay, cool. So there's the image vulnerabilities piece there, giving me a breakdown. There's a couple of namespaces that's giving an issue. I'm going to see what's the critical one. And this is the namespace bad developer. Oh,
Hi, Wayne.
okay.
Are you able to zoom in a bit?
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
So just breaking that down again, I've created a policy that implements image vulnerabilities. That policy then, what it does is it deploys the actual Claire operator, and that what it'll do is then scan the entire cluster, and any vulnerabilities on any namespaces will be shown. So you can see in this example, this bad developer namespace and application is pretty, it's an issue. So we need to figure out what to do with that and what's our sort of remediation around it. In this example, it gives a link to the Claire outputs, which is hosted on Quay.io. You can see a breakdown of all the vulnerabilities and the remediation required fixed version of that. So simple upgrade of all these components will make sure that we're compliant and we're up to spec and all that on the service. So this is invaluable, especially when you're running loads of clusters and having an issue of how you manage this service. Okay, I'm just going to show you a bit more about one of the nice working applications. For this web method application over here, we're able to see things like routes, for instance. We can link off to those routes if required. We're able to see how many replications are running. So there's an issue on my EKS cluster for some reason. The deployment itself, all these objects are visible in YAML, and we can obviously see, as I mentioned earlier on, how much resources are being utilized currently on the cluster. So we can make a decision on whether or not we want to do a placement rule to deploy our application on here. So for instance, okay, I'm looking at my APAC cluster, memory 7%, CPU 12%. It looks like a good candidate. I might deploy it over there. So that way you can make sort of decisions of where you can place things and dynamically change that. The last thing I want to show you, and sorry for jumping around, I've just got to get to my right, got too many tabs open, is the capability on dynamically deploying the cluster itself. So as you saw in the previous slide example, we're able to sort of dynamically create a cluster from this, and I'll show you how you sort of navigate this. And on the right hand side, it creates the YAML, so you can actually modify that YAML if required and download as an artifact. And further to that, you can choose different variations on releases, your connection provider, and you can change things like your networking if you want to change the CIDR ranges. What's crucial around this is your environment labeling. So if you notice that there's like a reference to the different purpose of the cluster, so this is quite crucial for your placement rules. You're able to say, for instance, you have a placement rule equal to dev. When you create your application, as long as your placement rule is defined correctly, the application will be deployed in that. So that's how it sort of ties everything together, and that way you're able to manage it. So some exciting stuff coming with the bare metal deployment piece. I don't know if anybody's tried to do bare metal deployments in any form, but effectively it's pretty challenging, especially when you've got you have to do this manually and all that. What ACM gives you is a capability to integrate to the IPMI service, and that way you're able to dynamically deploy bare metal assets. And essentially, that way it's really easy to manage running a cluster. I'm going to show you last but not least the policy management piece and how that works. Sorry for jumping around again. Okay, so here's a breakdown of the policy management piece. I've created a couple of policies that are visible over here. You can see the example of where I created the image policy vulnerability, and effectively that will again enforce and deploy vulnerability scanning. The next one is to determine whether or not we have a privileged pod running in the cluster. So that way you can ensure that no one tries to break the rules by running something as root. The other example is like an RBAC policy. So essentially you can ensure that the RBAC's been set up correctly. And this is an inform example. SEC, if you're familiar with that, you can create custom ones, or you can ensure that SEC is running. And in each of these, there's kind of a set amount of standards. So that way I can actually show kind of my standard that I'm adhering to. I'm going to quickly show this from a topology point of view, and that way it kind of makes a bit more sense. Okay, so if you look at the topology view, I choose the image vulnerabilities piece, and that way I can see where my clusters are the vulnerable ones and the placement of that. I can dig into this and how that relates to the actual policies. This is very useful in actually getting a visual view of what's happening with my various clusters. Okay, so finally, we're just going to talk a bit about the roadmap and what's coming down the line. I'm going to present that quickly. So as I mentioned, this is version 2. Some great stuff came out. Looking to September, hopefully, which is quite soon, for 2.1. And effectively, we're going to expand the capability around being able to deploy to different providers. I think quite a few of people are interested in the OpenStack side of things, Rev and vSphere. So we're really expanding that capability, and the GA for bare metal is targeted for 2.1. Also, some exciting stuff around Thanos. So I don't know if anybody's familiar with that, but effectively Thanos is the capability to do federated Prometheus. So essentially taking multiple cluster metrics and putting them in one place. I'm looking forward to seeing what that looks like. Telemetry stuff is very, very interesting. So it's integrating to insights, and I know a lot of work's been done around remediation playbooks. So eventually that should hopefully result in policy management and all that. Further down the line, things around Submariner and compliance operators being incorporated, starting, as well as managing OpenShift virtualization, which used to be called CNV, but that's now GA. So the ability to manage actual virtual machines, OpenShift itself. So yes, that's it. Hopefully everybody enjoyed that. Don't know if there's any questions.
Awesome, Wayne.
Nice.
Yes.
Sorry for jumping around a bit. It's a bit of a big screen. I think I need to get a smaller screen.
And that was really awesome.
That's really good. Yeah, that's really good demo, Wayne. By that. How about other people? Do you guys have some questions about what was just shown by Wayne?
So I think while we wait for questions, I think one of the interesting sort of use cases one of our customers approached us about is managing storage. So how do you use ACM to manage storage? There's quite a good project that's just going on. It's just kind of like experimental at the moment, but of course down the line, I'll just put it as a GitHub from one of our good guys, Ryan Cook. And essentially, this is the ability to kind of manage multi-site storage, and this integrates with something like OCS, as Mark mentioned. So going forward, like architecturally, having like a stretched Ceph cluster external with OCS ACM managing that, that looks really, so there's some exciting stuff, and I'm really keen to get onto that.
Yeah. Cool. So I only have one question here coming from Raja. He is asking why he can't sign in using his personal email and explore ACM. I actually provided him the link about a blog on what ACM is, and there's some recorded demo there as well. But I think trying this and downloading this is also possible as long as you have a Red Hat subscription.
Yep, that's actually another question in the background, Michael. What's the subscription requirements in order for our customers or for anyone to run ACM if they want to, use it on their environments?
So yeah, I think as far as I'm aware, there's if you're an existing OpenShift user, there's like quite a nominal charge to add the feature, and then of course new users there's a different bit. So of course contact the other guys around that. Another question: image vulnerability requires any scanning tool? So as I mentioned, that's an actual operator that's based on the Claire operator, which is, if you're familiar with Claire and Quay, effectively that deploys the operator onto your cluster, and you're able to then do the image scanning. Hopefully that helps.
There is another question from Tim on the chat. Can ACM deploy new clusters or only manage existing clusters?
So yeah, hopefully that came across. You are able to deploy brand new clusters in the cloud providers and bare metal, and then you're able to manage existing clusters as well as existing vanilla Kubernetes or Kubernetes anywhere, effectively. And again, you're able to apply policies and manage the applications.
I was not able to hear your answer on questions from Inder. Did you get this question, Wayne? Okay.
Yeah, I did. I did answer that. So as always, our stuff, I'll put it in the chat there, but all our stuff is open source. This is the main repo. Everybody can have a squiz. Take a look. Quite a few great stuff that's going on there. It talks about how you can deploy this via the operator, or you can do it, that's the easy way, or you can do it the hard way and do it from command line, which we love. So depending how busy you are, how you want to go about it. A question from Tim. Yes, custom policies, definitely. That's a capability that we're going to be integrating with the Essential 8 stuff. So I'll definitely send you some information on how to do that, because everything I do in the UI, of course, is an artifact. So there's no reason you can't, create your own policy and adhere to it, as long as it's following the spec. So essentially, what's really great about version 2 is it's a brand new written API for the policy management piece. And we're looking at ways to integrate to something called OPA, which is Open Policy Agent. So I really would like to start setting that up. I was waiting for version 2. So effectively having OPA control those policies and propagate those. Pretty exciting.
Cool.
Yep, and I think supportability-wise, Wayne, it's only supported on which version of OpenShift at the moment?
So that'll be only version 4. So of course we recommend you run on the latest, but I mean I've been able to run this on 4.3, 4.4. I think they say in the documentation for 4.1x, but of course you will want to be running on a newer version possible. One of the other things I forgot to show you is the capability to do like a batch upgrade. I did forget that bit of magic, but effectively you can select multiple OpenShift clusters and do the capability of doing a batch upgrade of those. There might be a situation where you upgrade all the dev ones and using it over the air. So that's something that unfortunately I did forget to show, but forgive me.
Yeah.
And I think Michael also posted a poll on the next few topics that might be of interest to our meetup community. And not only that, if you're interested to go a deep dive on ACM, feel free to have a chat with the Red Hat team here, and we'll be more than happy to do succeeding demos and presentations to you as well. So yeah, appreciate if you can answer in the poll so that we know what's like the pulse on the current interest, so we can plan ahead of the topics that will be coming up on the next few months.
Cool.
Yeah, hopefully one day I'll get to Wellington again.
You should be coming in on a very stunning day such as today. So yeah, it would be nice to see you here.
Beers down at the wharf there would be great.
Correct.
Oh yeah.
And we can host another live meetup perhaps. I think that'll be nice.
Meetup, exactly.
Yes, with pizza and beers. Who knows?
Because my wife asked me today, "Are you actually meeting up?" I'm like, "No."
So it's always good to have a meetup with a beer and a pizza, right?
Correct.
So
nothing beats that, I reckon.
Yeah.
All right.
Meetup, we send pizzas to people's houses, eh?
Yeah, not a bad idea, right? One
Make
Andrew
a
box
listening?
per participant. Yeah,
If Andrew is listening, maybe we can figure it out.
yeah. That would be nice. But if you guys don't have any other question, thank you very much for attending. Thank you for your time. And of course, thanks to Michael and Wayne for joining us today. That was really an awesome presso and demo, Wayne. And love to meet you back here in Wellington at some point. And yeah,
Appreciate it.
Awesome.
And then any further questions, just email us or you send details around.
Right.
Thanks everybody. Thanks for organizing.
All right. Thanks everyone. See you on the next meetup.
Bye-bye.
Cheers, guys. Bye.
Gotcha.